From the shore, I counted 10 brand new cabins, each with picnic tables, grills, and rental signs waving in the breeze. The problem? That island didn't belong to the HOA, it belonged to me. And she was about to find that out in court. Before I reveal how her little resort project collapsed under one document, stay till the end. It was mid-April when I first noticed something was off. I hadn't visited the island in nearly 8 months. Life, work, and the seasons had kept me busy. But that Saturday, the lake called to me like it always did in spring. I untied my skiff, loaded a lunch cooler, and rowed out toward the little plot of land that had been in my family for generations, a quiet green gem in the middle of Lake Bellamy. My grandfather's name was still on the original deed. It was private. Untouched. Mine. As I approached, I saw movement. Then color. Then structure. I blinked against the glare. 10 small wooden cabins now stood along the treeline, spaced evenly, almost identical in design. Bright white paint, little flower pots out front, and laminated rental signs staked beside each one. I slowed the boat, heart racing. A woman in khaki shorts and a clipboard waved at me from the dock like she owned the place. I didn't wave back. When I stepped onto the dock, I was hit by the smell of fresh paint and charcoal smoke. 2 families were grilling burgers. A kid ran by holding a volleyball. The woman with the clipboard, Cheryl, known around here as HOA Karen, greeted me like I was a guest. "Welcome to Lake Bell Cabins," she said cheerfully. "You'll need a wristband for the island. We're charging $20 a day now." I stared at her. "You built this?" I asked flatly. She nodded, proud. "It's part of the HOA's Spring Expansion Initiative. Took 6 weeks. We partnered with a local builder. Smart, right?" I didn't smile. "This island isn't HOA property," I said. "It's private." She frowned like I'd just mispronounced her name. "That's not what our survey said," she replied. "We've had control of this land since the lake was remapped last year." I didn't argue. I just turned around, got in my boat, and rowed straight back to shore. The moment I hit land, I dug through my safe. The deed was right where I left it, sealed, recorded, and crystal clear. Plot 27. Island parcel. Exclusive rights passed down through 2 generations. HOA or not, they had 0 claim. I called my lawyer the same night. The next morning, we sent them a cease and desist letter. Karen responded through an HOA email, stating their assumed jurisdiction based on lakefront symmetry guidelines. My lawyer laughed out loud. "That's not law," he said. "That's fiction." Still, I knew people like her. She wouldn't back down because she'd already invested money, maybe even sold reservations. This wasn't confusion. It was arrogance. Over the next week, I gathered every document I had: property surveys, county tax records, the notarized deed. Meanwhile, she kept promoting the cabins online. I even saw a post where she claimed island rights were acquired through community majority. There had been no vote. No legal acquisition. Just wood, nails, and nerve. My lawyer filed for emergency injunction. The court granted it in less than 48 hours. A sheriff's deputy met me at the boat ramp the next morning, papers in hand. Together, we rowed to the island, no warrant needed, since I was the legal owner. Families watched us with confused eyes. Karen came storming down the hill when she saw the badge. The deputy served her the papers. She turned red. Then pale. Then silent. "This can't be right," she whispered. We mapped this." But the sheriff had already opened the folder. "Deed's clear," he said. "You're trespassing. Every cabin on this island is an illegal structure." And just like that, the smiles vanished. The grills went cold. And the foundation beneath her HOA empire started to crack. The following morning, I returned to the island with a quiet sense of finality. I wasn't carrying documents this time. Just a camera. I took photos of every cabin from every angle, timestamps, details, signs. Evidence. My lawyer said it was important to capture the condition of the property before removal began, in case the HOA tried to spin the narrative later. And I knew they would. People like Karen didn't vanish quietly. Back on the mainland, the HOA released a formal statement on their website. It was a masterpiece of blame deflection. Due to a clerical oversight in regional parcel boundaries, a recent improvement project was temporarily paused by a property dispute. It never once mentioned me. Never once admitted fault. Just pause, like they planned to start again after a coffee break. But the court wasn't pausing anything. Within a week, the judge issued a standing order requiring the removal of all structures on the island within 30 days, or fines would escalate daily. The HOA had no appeal grounds, not when faced with decades-old deeds and county-verified borders. I received a letter from their attorney 2 days later, politely asking if I'd consider leasing the island to the HOA to avoid demolition. I didn't reply. I forwarded it to my lawyer, who shredded it without a word. Karen's tone shifted after that. From smug to sulky. She showed up at my dock one afternoon, uninvited and oddly quiet. "It was supposed to be for the community," she said. "We thought it would bring people together." I didn't reply. She wasn't there for an apology. She was there hoping I'd give her a way out. But I wasn't the one who owed. She was. A week later, a flatbed truck arrived at the lake, and one by one, the cabins began disappearing. Dismantled. Hauled away. No farewell posts on the HOA Facebook page. No more family grill-outs. Just silence. The removal took 5 days. When it was done, all that remained were patches of flattened grass and leftover concrete pads. It looked like a war zone of retreat. But that wasn't the end, because while the cabins were gone, the damage wasn't. My lawyer filed for restitution. The labor to restore the island. The disturbance. The attempted seizure. And yes, defamation. Because in the days following their eviction, Karen and a few of her board members started whispering that I faked the deed. That I tricked the sheriff. That I was a squatter pretending to be an owner. We had screenshots, witness accounts, and HOA newsletters to prove it. At the next court hearing, the judge didn't even blink. The HOA was ordered to pay $48,000 in damages, enough to cover removal costs, legal fees, restoration, and a little extra for what he called community manipulation under the guise of governance. Karen didn't even look up when the verdict was read. She just stared at the floor. After the ruling, several HOA members resigned. The treasurer, the vice chair, 2 committee leads. The entire structure shook. It had taken one lie, one bold move too far, to bring it down. The community started pushing for open elections. Transparency. Term limits. Karen was ousted quietly, but completely. Her name erased from all official posts. And me? I returned to my island one cool morning in early May, tossed a folding chair into the grass, and just listened. The birds were back. The water lapped gently against the shore. No cabins. No noise. No fake rules. Just land and silence, exactly how my grandfather left it. That's when it hit me. She thought she could build on what wasn't hers. But I had roots here, deeper than she'd ever understand. The storm Karen started didn't stop with the cabins. The ripple effects spread through the neighborhood like wildfire. At the next HOA town hall, people no longer sat silently while Karen's rules were read off like scripture. One by one, residents stood up, not to attack, but to ask questions. When were maps changed? Who approved budgets for those cabins? Why wasn't anyone notified? And most importantly, how did one woman take control of an island that was never hers? Karen wasn't in the room that night. She'd quietly stepped down a week earlier, citing personal health reasons. But the truth was, her empire had collapsed under its own arrogance. Without the illusion of authority, she was just a neighbor again, one who had overstepped more than just a boundary line. I didn't attend the meeting. I didn't need to. That wasn't my fight anymore. Instead, I focused on restoring what mattered. My grandfather's island had scars now. The grass where cabins once stood was dead and pressed. Trash left behind had to be cleaned. Nails, broken pipes, scattered plastic chairs. I spent afternoons hauling debris onto a raft and towing it back to shore. It was hard work, but it was honest, and I could almost feel my grandfather watching. He'd always said, "Land remembers. Treat it right, and it'll outlive the noise." By midsummer, the island had begun to heal. Wildflowers returned to the disturbed soil. Geese nested on the far edge. The water, once clouded by boat traffic and floating trash, ran clear again. I built a single bench under the old maple and stained it dark oak, not for show, but for stillness. That's all the island ever needed. Not cabins. Not rentals. Just room to breathe. Then something unexpected happened. One of the families who'd rented a cabin months ago contacted me through my lawyer. A young couple with 2 kids. They'd thought the island was public. When they found out it wasn't, they were embarrassed, and then angry that they'd been misled. They offered to volunteer, help clean, plant trees, whatever they could. I said yes. And for the first time, I didn't feel like I was defending the island alone. Soon after, more neighbors came. Not because I asked, but because they felt something. A quiet sort of guilt, maybe. Or respect. Or both. The HOA's walls had kept people apart for years. Meetings, fines, warnings, endless rules. Now here they were. On my dock. Asking to help fix what never should have been broken. Karen was still around. Her house stood 4 streets up, past the bend. I'd see her sometimes at the grocery store. She never made eye contact. She never apologized. But she didn't need to. Because everything she built on a lie had already been taken down, not by force, but by truth. That's when I realized this story was never about cabins. Or islands. Or fences. It was about something deeper. What happens when control goes unchecked? What happens when someone draws a line with ink instead of integrity? The island had become more than land. It had become a mirror, reflecting exactly where we all stood. By the time fall arrived, the island looked like it had never been touched. The flattened ground where the cabins once stood was now covered in golden weeds and tall grass, blowing gently in the breeze. Birds returned. The air had that sharp, earthy smell I remembered from my childhood: wet wood, lake water, distant pine. It no longer felt like a place I had to protect. It felt like a place that had protected me. The court settlement had been finalized weeks earlier. $48,000 deposited directly into my legal trust. Most of it would go to restoration, permits, and conservation fencing. I wasn't interested in profit. I never had been. All I wanted was for the land to be left alone, to be respected. And now, it finally was. The HOA board had been almost entirely replaced. A few of the old members stayed on, but their tone had changed. Meetings were now public, transparent, and brief. No more power games. No more secret projects. They even mailed me an official apology, signed, notarized, and sincere. I didn't frame it. I just filed it away with the rest of the documents. Quiet victories didn't need to be displayed. Karen stayed out of sight. Word was she sold her house quietly to a couple from out of state. No goodbye party. No farewell speech. Just one morning, a moving truck in the driveway, and by evening, gone. I wasn't surprised. People like her never truly admit defeat. They just vanish when the noise stops being theirs to control. One afternoon in late October, I rode back out to the island alone. The water was still. The sky soft with overcast light. I brought nothing but a thermos and my grandfather's old field journal, a book filled with hand-drawn maps, planting notes, and water levels from 30 years ago. I sat on the bench beneath the maple tree and flipped through the yellowed pages, feeling the weight of everything that had happened. A line in his handwriting stopped me. This land owes nothing. It only asks that you listen. I had listened. I had fought. Not with fists or threats or mobs. But with paper. With patience. With quiet resolve. Karen had built cabins to claim ownership. But I had something stronger: history, honesty, and a deed no clipboard could rewrite. A breeze passed through the trees, rustling leaves in a slow whisper. I closed the journal and stood, brushing dust from my sleeves. Looking around, I saw no signs of the fight that had taken place here, no scars, no splinters, no wreckage. Just peace. The kind of peace you earn when you don't back down. Back on the shore, people sometimes still ask me if I'd ever consider building something out there. A cabin. A dock. Maybe even a rentable retreat. And I always give the same answer. No. That island already has everything it needs. Because some places aren't meant to be bought. They're meant to be kept. And some lines, once drawn, were never meant to be moved.